Is it possible to create a successful fiber arts business while juggling family life, bringing up young children, and dealing with chronic disease? Well, my guest today will show us how she does it. Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina, I'm the host here. My guest today is Jen Duffy from Nova Mercury Designs. I mean, I'll tell you what caught my attention first time I saw your account. It was that reel where you're sitting on the skateboard and you're scooting back and forth while putting all the different threads into that loom. And I was like, this is just so brilliant. But like, tell me how you discovered weaving for yourself. Like, you weren't weaver from the childhood, right? How did you start?
That's so funny. Yeah, and hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the story of how I got into weaving is a little roundabout. I was super creative as a child. I did a lot of art. I never did any fiber art, but I was always drawing, always painting. If you had asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was a kid, I would have for sure said an artist. But then moving into adulthood, I just sort of got away from it and I really stopped making art completely. I didn't make art at all for like 20 years. And then after the birth of my second kid, I was on maternity leave. I live in Canada and we have a nice long maternity leave after we have babies. And I was just looking for a way to reconnect to myself. And I wanted to just do some like artistic things or crafty things, try making things. And I actually got into macrame first. So macrame, I always say, was sort of my gateway to fiber art. So that was the first thing I tried. I just made some plant hangers for my house. I did an online class with Emily Katz. She's runs Modern Macrame in Portland. And that's how I learned. And I just totally fell in love with like manipulating the fibers with my hands. And I don't know if you've done macrame, but it's really repetitive. Like you do the same things over and over again. And I found it like a really just nice way to sort of relax and take my mind off things. And I don't know, I just thought that when I learned macrame, weaving to me sort of seemed like a logical next step to get into. I don't know if it is, but that's in my brain it was. So I just ordered a loom off of Etsy and some fiber. And I also did an online class again on Creative Bug. This time it was with Annabella Quigley. She's a quilter, mostly known for her quilting, but she also taught this weaving class. And I just, sorry, this is such a long story, but I completely just fell in love with it. There was something about the process of weaving that just really spoke to me very deeply. And again, I really loved that sort of like meditative and mindful aspect of it. And I think with weaving, compared to macrame, I just felt like the range of fibers that I could use was just like a lot more vast. And I love working with color, and that's what I'm really attracted to. So I just sort of fell into it. And I think I've been weaving pretty much every day since that first time that I wove. Yeah.
I interviewed this fiber artist from Australia, Meredith Woolnough, and she does freehand machine embroidery. And she has a little baby. So a lot of her reels is like putting the baby into the high chair, giving the baby pacifier, trying to do a couple cuttings, and then the baby drops the pacifier and all these things, and then like changing the baby on the same like yeah. There's like, it's just like the joy of motherhood, right? How did you manage to have 2 young children and turn this hobby into a business?
That's a great question. It's sort of, I want to say that it happened sort of organically. Like when I started, I had no intention of turning it into a business. It was really something I would do for myself. Often when the kids were asleep, like in the evening, I would just take some time for myself and I would be making. And I just felt like such a drive and a passion for doing it. And I wanted to, I had a job to go back to, but I decided to not go back to my job and that I was going to try to make a living selling macrame and weaving, which seems wild now, but at the time it just felt really right. Like I just was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I have a background of working in like retail management and customer service. When I was younger, I did that for a really long time. So I do have some knowledge around how to run a service-based business and working with customers. So I think that helped a lot. But yeah, my partner was really supportive of me doing it. I'm really lucky where I live too, that we have like, again, like really affordable childcare, and both of my kids were in childcare. So I was able to work full time once they were both in daycare and school. So that helped a lot as well. But I think it was just me feeling really passionate about what I was doing and really excited. And I just really wanted to make it work.
How did your friends, your family, like people who know you for a long time, right? So there you are working in a corporate environment, taking a short maternity leave, and suddenly, boom, you turn into the full-time artist. Like, how was their reaction? Were they surprised?
That's a good question too. Some people were not surprised. I think people who know me well know that I'm like a really driven and ambitious person, and I've started up other projects on my own in the past. So doing something like this isn't totally out of character for me. I think making the art, some people were surprised, but I've just been so lucky that everyone in my life has been like incredibly supportive of me doing this. And the longer I do it, the more I feel like this is really what I'm supposed to do in some way. Like, you know, I do think that everyone is here with a purpose of a gift that they can share with the world. And I do think making art and sharing my love of creating with people is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, when you first started, so you took this one class, right? What was the process of learning after that one class? Because I'm sure it's a limited amount of knowledge that they can instill in the most talented pupil during one class. How difficult was it to find like information about it on your own? How difficult it was to learn new techniques?
It definitely isn't the way it is now. Like I started weaving about 6 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but even in the landscape of fiber arts, there were not as many resources then as there are now. There's so many resources. Like now you can go on YouTube, on Instagram, you can find resources for weaving very easily. There's lots of online classes, books. Some of that existed for sure. So I did take some other classes, but I mostly just practiced. So, I mean, weaving is like this ancestral practice that exists in like basically every culture in the world. And I think you could study it for an entire lifetime and you still wouldn't know everything. And there's different kinds of weaving and different types of looms. So for myself, I would say my knowledge is limited. Like I'm a frame loom weaver. My creative process is very organic and more, I think, around like using color and imaginative composition. Like I'm not the most technical weaver. There's a lot of techniques that I do not know how to do. There's definitely people out there who are way more talented in that respect. But yeah, I say this to my students a lot too, because I teach, and I think the best way to learn is to practice. So like I said in a joking way that I think I've been weaving every day for 6 years, but I've been weaving every day for 6 years. So if you practice every day, you just constantly build on your knowledge, you improve your skills, you learn new things. I also always encourage my students to really experiment. So to like try different materials, try different techniques. If you see an artist using techniques that you find really interesting, like experiment and play around with those things in your own work, because unless you try new things, you're not going to grow as an artist. And I still feel that way, that I never want to be put sort of into a box. I want to learn as much as I can and just keep growing. It's a process for sure.
Well, I mean, I saw one of your posts where you were describing, there was like a couple wall hangings and you were talking how like I decorate my walls with these kilims. And there is huge culture of kilims actually, and like all the rules of it and how it's supposed to be done. Is that your ambition to like continue learning all your life, like about the history of it and like the techniques that have been used hundreds of years ago? Or do you see yourself as like you have your own style and this is what you're gonna do?
I think that's so interesting. A bit of both. I would say I'm not so personally interested in learning those techniques for myself, but I think it's, if you practice an art medium or a craft, I think it is important to know the history of where techniques come from and the cultures that they come from, because obviously there's a lot of appropriating that happens without giving credit to you know, the origins of particular techniques or designs. So I do think it's important to know your history and know where things come from, for sure. In my own personal practice, I do like to think that I am a contemporary weaver and my style is my own style, and it is obviously using some of those techniques, but I'm using them in a way that's unique to me. I think my pieces, I think I've been practicing long enough now that my pieces are mine, and I have my own voice as a weaver, and that comes across. So I do think it's a balance of both. And like I said, I'm not such a technical weaver, so learning those techniques isn't something I always use in my work, but I think it's important to know. I'm also like obsessed with rugs and have killens all over my house, so I have a like great appreciation for them. They're so beautiful.
Well, I mean, when you weave, right, do you think like if people look at the picture of your weaving, they immediately think, oh, this is Jen's art? Like, is that recognizable? And are you concerned that it's recognizable if it is? Like, do you feel like you have to always evolve and try something different?
Yeah, it's both for me. So I do think my art is recognizable. I get told a lot by other people that it is. So people will often say like, oh, I saw this and I knew it was yours. And even if I'm trying something new, people will often still say that. They'll say like, I still see you and your voice in this piece. So I do think if you're working as an artist now, it is important to have your own voice and your own point of view and your own perspective as an artist. I think that's a big part of why we make art as humans, you know, as a way to express ourselves in the world. So for people who are just maybe starting out, I think that's something that takes time to develop and a lot of practice. So like, it's not going to come to you right away. It's definitely something that you need to spend time developing. But at the same time, like I said, I don't love being put in a box. So I would never just want to be known for making one thing or only making one thing. I love to try new things. I love when I work with clients for commissions, you know, because they often maybe have ideas for things that I wouldn't necessarily weave myself, but I love trying new things and I love a challenge. So I just finished like a big landscape this week, and it's probably not something I would have chose to wove on my own, but I like really enjoyed the process and I had so much fun making it, and it was just something new for me. So I'm always learning and evolving.
Well, some of the pieces that you make they look like very abstract, and it looks almost like you just grab the next whatever is out there blindly and put it on, right? And it sort of reminds me, you know, those artists that just like pour paint onto like swirling table or something, and suddenly there's some design on the top. And I always like, when I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, it looks so simple, like anybody can do it. But on the other hand, like if you try to do it, it's just gonna like turn into this horrible mess. So there is like big intent into placement of those colors and the preciseness of like how much color you put and like where is it going to be placed. How much thinking goes into your pieces? Like how much of it is just impromptu, sort of grabbing what looks right now, or how much like do you plan before you start the piece?
It depends. If I'm making just for myself, and I would say my weaving process is I often say it's very intuitive and organic. So I usually have an idea of what I want to do in my head, but it's like a loose idea. And I love the idea of my loom being like a blank canvas. So when I sit down to weave, I've chosen materials, but I never feel like obligated to use those. So if I need to change when I'm working, like while I'm creating, the piece sort of speaks to me as I'm working, and I do whatever feels good in that moment. It's a lot for me about feeling and how it makes me feel, and aesthetic. I think a lot of what I do is about color. Like color is just so inspiring to me, and it evokes a lot of emotion in me, and that's I really want my work to be joyful and to bring joy and cheer into people's spaces, and that is very intentional. But the amount of thought I put into it, like in a premeditated way, is pretty minimal. I don't really think about it. I just sort of do it, and then it happens. And again, this is like practice too, right? Like I've been doing this for 6 years. So 6 years ago, that would have been hard for me, but now it comes pretty naturally. If I'm working with a client on a commission, so like I make pieces for people's homes a lot, if I'm doing that, I will often sketch and have more of a plan, but it's different because I'm usually collaborating with someone on a vision that's shared by both of us. So, but that's fun too. And I really love trying new things. So,
well, when
yeah.
I watched some of your videos, like you do the landscape, but it's upside down. Is that a difficult thing to like have in your head, like that you putting some color, but it has to be actually be the other way around?
Yeah, it was when I first started out for sure. And like, I learned to weave right side up, and then later on I learned about weaving upside down, so I can do both, and I prefer weaving upside down for a couple of different reasons. And yeah, sometimes it can be kind of tricky, or I really spend like I do actually like turn my head around to look at it to try to get a sense of the space, but you also get used to it. So it's like I'm used to it now, so I'm pretty like good at planning it. But yeah, when people see me doing it, they have a hard time understanding it unless they do it themselves. It's a little strange to work upside down, but.
Well, let's start talking about like the beginning of your business, right? So you decided one day that, you know what, I can probably sell this. How did it go from you? How difficult or how easy was it to develop this business, to find those clients, to market yourself, to advertise yourself? What was that process for you?
It was like, it definitely took time to build the business, and it was a lot of trial and error. Like I said, I think I'm lucky that I had a lot of retail experience already. So a lot of it wasn't like brand new for me. I knew a lot of things that I was supposed to do. I'd been shopping on Etsy for years. So that was my go-to place to open a store. I just was like, I can have an Etsy store. This will be easy. And I may be like overconfident sometimes. I just kind of think that I can do anything I want to do, which
was it easy?
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't, but I did it. You know, I was just like, I'm going to do this, and things like, you know, shipping and materials and marketing and branding, like that was all a learning curve that I had to learn myself. But I'm lucky. Have a great network of people in Montreal where I live. This is a city of creatives, so I just know so many creative people. I had a lot of friends I could lean on. I found a couple stores locally that would carry my macrame at the time. So that was really great too. I wasn't just selling online. I was also selling locally in Montreal in stores. And that really helped me in the first like year or two of my business. And I also think I was sort of in the right place at the right time. Like fiber arts were just sort of taking off. And I think I got my foot in the door right as that was like escalating. So I think part of it was just like luck and chance and just being in the right place at the right time. But it's a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work for sure.
Do you think it's possible to make money on fiber crafts if you start in 2022?
That's a really good question. I get asked that a lot. I definitely think yes, you can. I would say the market now is like way more saturated than when I started. There are like easily 3 or 4 times as many people doing this. So it seems like a lot of people pick up a fiber craft and then are just selling their things almost immediately, which is what I did, but it's not what I really recommend to people to do now. So yeah, I do think it's harder to stand out. I think you really need to be like original and have a product or a point of view that's really different and that will sort of stand out from the crowd. But I'm sure you can still make a living from doing it for sure.
Well, you have like a pretty large following on Instagram. What was that difficult to establish? Like, and with Instagram changing its algorithms like every single day, like it feels like, do you find that frustrating, or do you find it just to be part of the business?
It's like, yeah, Instagram has changed a lot. So I've been posting on Instagram as long as I've had my business. Instagram was an integral part of me starting my business. It's definitely the space where I've shared my entire journey. I've never archived anything, so you can even go back in my Instagram feed and basically see my whole fiber career if you wanted to. It's all there. But at the time, like when I started out, it was just super organic. I would say it was really consistent. I posted every day. So I would post every day. I would post something. I definitely tried to do things like improve my photography skills and improve my branding and messaging. But I was also just being myself and just sharing what I made. I'm a pretty like private person, so I don't share a lot of my personal life on Instagram. It's really like my business. But my follower count was just completely organic. It just happened on its own. I think it's really difficult to get that kind of follower count now if you're just starting out, because the algorithm has changed so much and how you get followers on Instagram is completely different. It's actually really hard to be seen at all right now. So even if you're an account like mine that has tons of followers, it doesn't mean that all my followers see my posts. They definitely don't. There's a lot of like jumping through hoops with reels and stuff right now. It's really frustrating. It is part of the business, I guess, in that, you know, Instagram is a free platform and they've never promised anyone anything, and we're not in control of it in some ways. But it is frustrating because I think creatives are what built Instagram to be what it is now. And I think as a company, they're making a lot of decisions and, you know, shifting things that are hurting a lot of these same people that I think really made it an amazing space. And that's disappointing, but I'm not surprised necessarily, right? So,
well, I heard in one of your interviews that you said that when kids come home from school, your work is done. Like you work limited amount of hours, you work every, like whatever, Monday through Friday, every day, but when they home, you're a mom. Are you very disciplined, like in everything you do? Like, is everything planned? Like, do you know that you wake up today and you're gonna work from this hour to this hour, and then you're gonna answer your emails from this hour to this hour? Like, how planned is your day?
it's not quite that rigid, but it is pretty planned and organized. I like to have my time organized. It's just, I think, how my brain works and how I exist in the world. I also, I live with chronic illness. So I have limited capacity for things. So I think over many years, I've had to learn to really plan and organize my time, because I don't have like an unlimited amount of energy in the day, if that makes sense. Like I get tired and I need breaks. So I do really need to plan my life out to make sure I have time for all the things I want to do and energy. My kids are obviously really important to me, and I have, I think, pretty good boundaries with my work practice. It's hard when you work from home sometimes, right? Like everyone's in this boat now where everyone's working from home, and it's tricky to have those boundaries. But I'm somebody that, like, yeah, when I'm working, I'm on and I'm working, but then when I need to switch gears and my kids come home, I just put my work down for the day. And then because I want to be present with them in the moment. I don't want to be distracted. There's obviously moments where I am, and like if I'm on a deadline or something, I might have to do some extra work, but I try not to live like that.
Well, talking about working from home, there is this whole conversation of stash and taking space, right?
Yeah.
So are you very organized with your materials, your looms, like all of that stuff?
Yeah, I try to be. Like, I'm in my studio right now. My studio is half of my living room. So we have like a double living room. So one half is like the couch and the TV and where everybody hangs out, and the other half is my workspace. And we had actually moved into this apartment because our old apartment is where I started my business, and we just outgrew the space. There was nowhere for me to work. I could get a studio out of the house, but having young kids and having chronic illness, it makes a lot of sense for me to work at home. It's just a better environment for me. But because I do work at home, I do keep my things really organized and tidy so that they're just, everything has a place. But I'm like that with everything. I'm a very like neat and organized person. The whole house is like that. Yeah.
You mentioned the chronic illness. So you're dealing with a lot of fatigue and you're dealing with a lot of muscle aches. How do you take care of yourself?
I try to like, a lot of it's just having been to learn to live within my capacity to do things. So I used to be somebody who just went like full on all the time. I was doing like 100 things at once, super busy. I don't live my life like that anymore. I can't, it's not possible for me. So giving myself a lot of space. I don't work 40 hours a week. I don't work all the time. And there's a reason for that. You know, I think the culture we live in right now is unsustainable for so many people. It's just, everything is like busy, busy, busy. Everybody's stressed. I don't want to live my life like that. So I try to slow down as much as I can. And I don't try not to overschedule myself, try not to work too much. I like to have a lot of time for my family, for my kids, for pleasure. I get like 9 hours of sleep a night. I go to bed super early. I eat like healthy foods as much as I can. Like I actually have to do a lot of things to take care of myself. I won't go into it, but yeah, I have to like follow like a pretty specific food protocol, get a lot of sleep. And if I do all those things, I feel okay most of the time and I don't have a lot of flare-ups in it. But it's taken me like 15 years to sort of figure out what works for me. I have fibromyalgia, so it's not something that I can take like a medication for or work with a doctor really. They can't do very much for you. So a lot of it is like lifestyle and just managing your own stress and taking good care of yourself.
Well, do you think that fiber arts make a difference for you in like dealing with the chronic illness?
1000%. Yes. I think making art, it helps in a lot of ways. I'm actually I was considering recently maybe going back to school to do a degree in art therapy, because I think having a creative practice of any kind, it doesn't have to be fiber art, but I think it's incredibly healing on a lot of levels. And I think for me, like having a place to put all of my, for like, you know, my pain or my suffering, I have a place to put it and express myself. And then the art I make is, I like to think is really beautiful and joyful, you know, like it's allowed me to be able to process some of what I live with every day. But I feel like I'm at a place in my life now that's really good, and I feel good most of the time. So I don't rely on it as much, but there was a period in my life where I think, yeah, like having that space to just express myself is so essential. And I think that everybody in the world would benefit immensely from having a creative practice. I think we're all creative beings. And I think everybody should do something that is just for them and it's not connected to work or anything that you need to make money, you know, and you can just sort of, yeah, have a place to process all the stuff.
You mentioned that though, like when you were younger, you were painting and drawing a lot. Do you think people need to be artists in order to do weaving? Like, do you think it's very helpful skill to know how to draw?
Yeah, I don't think you need to do anything like professionally. No, is that what you mean?
Or like not professionally, but like be gifted at and talented in that?
No, I teach weaving workshops like all the time. And the people who take my classes, it's like all sorts of people. So some people are like, do all the crafts already and they just want to learn another craft and they're super creative people. And then I have students who are like not creative at all or don't think that they are and don't have a creative practice. And those are the people that I want to encourage the most to do, because I think everyone is creative. You just have to find your medium that you want to work in. And it doesn't need to be like art making per se. Like I think even like accounting or computer programming is really creative too, right? Like there's all sorts of ways to be creative, but I think finding something that's just for you and that you can spend time doing and it fills your cup and makes you feel good. I think it's even better if you're not making money off it, you know, like that you can just do for yourself or make gifts for people in your life. I think it's so, so important.
I'll ask you a very technical question. So when I knit, right, like if I have a very complicated lace chart, I find it easier to knit than if I have like a simple Fair Isle hat where I have to pick all the colors for the Fair Isle just because it's totally on me, right? Like the whole process is on me. It's not just following the chart, it's making all these decisions. What color is gonna come next? What colors mix with each other? What colors showcase each other? What colors are gonna blend into like one brown mess, you know? So I find that like, even though like people would think it's much easier project, I find it much more difficult for myself than meeting something very complicated with very clear instructions. Do you find it with your students? Because you basically like, this is the hoop, this is the yarn you can pick from, go for it. Like, is it difficult for people to go for it?
It is. For some people it is, and for other people it's not. Like, you see, like, it's so funny what you're saying, because I feel like I'm the opposite from you, Irina. So like, if I have like a complicated pattern to follow and it's like step by step, my brain is just like, nope, like forget it. And I've tried to learn to knit like so many times, and I struggle with it because it's pattern based, and it doesn't work. But if someone is like, here's a loom and here's a huge pile of colors, make something, I'm so excited because I want to pick everything, and that comes easily to me. And I think that's just, we just have a different way of seeing the world and how we process things, right? So I see the same thing in my students, because when I teach a pattern and I teach it step by step, because especially people who are just starting out, it's much easier. And some people learn better when they're following a pattern and they just want to follow and they want to do exactly what you're doing. And like, I'll tell them the colors to use. And then I'll say to my students, you know, if you're feeling creative and you want to do something different in the class, go for it. Like, just go do your own thing. And it's there's always a mix at the end where, you know, half the students will have followed the pattern exactly and followed my steps. And then there's always a few people who go off and will do their own thing and get really creative with the project. So I think we're all just individuals and we all have a different way of understanding things. So yeah, we're all just unique and different. There isn't like one way that's better than the other. But yeah, I really struggle with patterns. So that's awesome that you can do that, because I can't.
Well, do you ever look at your students' work and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Like, this is just awesome. I wish I came up with that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, people are so creative, and I love being with people, especially sometimes it's not even that they've done something like really out of the box, but I'll have students and I'll see how much they're doubting themselves at the beginning of the class, or they're very nervous, and you can just tell they're totally out of their comfort zone. And then at the end of the class, when they've made a weaving and they're clearly just, they've surprised themselves, I think that's so beautiful and great. And I just feel so, I always feel the proudest for people who are really going out of their comfort zone and doing something that they're not accustomed to. So
do you ever doubt yourself? Do you ever feel like an imposter? Like, what do I know? Like, there are people.
Yeah, all the time.
How do you deal with that?
Does anyone get to avoid the dreaded imposter syndrome? It's awful. No, I totally do, all the time. All the time. I think it's really hard not to. And I think it's hard in our age where, you know, we all spend a lot of time online looking at other people's work. It's hard not to compare yourself to other people. I even just think, like we were talking about Instagram before, you know, like if you don't feel like you're making as much as other people, like it can really trigger that. So I think, you know, I've lived enough life that I'm pretty confident, and I have a strong sense of self. Like, I feel like I know who I am at this point. I'm 44, so I'm not old, but I've lived some life. And like, when I started doing this, I was in my late 30s, you know, so I maybe don't question myself as much, because I just feel like I also just do this for myself. I love it. And as long as people love what I make and they want to buy it from me, I'm like really happy to make them things. I feel super grateful that I get to do what I do, but I don't come from like a fine arts background, you know, like that's not, I didn't have any formal training in this. This is really just my own interest and creativity. And I'm so grateful to have a little space that I've carved out for myself. So I mostly feel that, but yeah, I don't think you can be an artist and not experience imposter syndrome sometimes. But
I feel like it's also like, if depending on the even not depending on the platform, like all these platforms, just because of the statistics and analytics, you always compare yourself with others. Like I feel it with YouTube, like I compare myself with other channels, like how often do they post? Like somebody was asking me yesterday, another YouTuber, and he's like, why do you post so much? And suddenly I'm like, oh my God, do I post so much? You know, like, are you guys all sick of me by now, right? Write it in the comments, like, should I stop, right? But there's like all these things with Instagram, you know, it's like yesterday I posted something and there was like 2,000 people who liked it, and today there's 70 people who like it. Is it a bad post? Did I do something wrong? Like, should I stop? Why do I even post, you know? So you start asking yourself all these questions, and you're getting so wrapped up in the algorithm and statistics, and then you suddenly like have to remind yourself, why am I doing this to start with, you know? You have to backpedal and say, you know what, this is just a tool, it's not my life.
Yeah, and Irina, I think you're totally right. Like, it's coming back to that central question, is like, why do I do this, or why am I here? Or like for me, you know, like I said, I feel like that this is my purpose in some way, like in some small way. I don't mean like I have this big purpose, but I just think, you know, we all have a purpose, you know, and it's the same for you. Like if you're here to share your love of fiber arts and you want to share all these amazing artists that you've discovered with other people, that's amazing. And even if only 5 people are watching your videos, I'm sure those 5 people love what you're putting out there. And if it feels good to you and you enjoy it, then you should do it and not care what anyone else thinks, right? Like,
well, you know what, I want to ask you this because sometimes I get the sense that nobody is watching, right? Like I'll post something and there's no comments, or there's like one comment from a person who's watching, like, let's say all my episodes. Love you guys, you know who you are. But then like sometimes somebody would write to me and say, you know, like I've watched like half of your episodes and I absolutely love what you're doing. And suddenly it dawns on me that like if I watch something or if I scroll the Instagram, I don't necessarily write comments under everything, right? But then I see it and I know you, and it's like registered in my memory, and like I remember you. So sometimes we don't get this feedback and we feel like nobody sees what we're doing and it's like all pointless and I'm putting all this time and energy. But like there are people who are watching and they just not very vocal about it. What's your favorite thing about interaction with your customers or your fan base with Instagram or like TikTok, all this social media?
well, yeah, and you like raised really good points. And like I think that's something that a lot of creatives, because it's hard to not use social media. Like you said, it's a tool, and it's a really important tool for a lot of creatives, especially for people who are in business. Like I sell things directly from my Instagram, you know? So it is great for that. But like, because I've been in that space ever since I started my business, I feel like there is a community of people on there, and it is a community. Like it's a group of people who all know each other, everybody supports one another, and it's really special for that, because I think a lot of us do work at home alone in our houses, and we don't have coworkers. And social media is incredible that it can allow you to connect with people from all over the world. So I have like amazing friends that I've known for 6 years on Instagram that are people that I truly think are my friends, you know, like some of them I've met in real life, but they're people I speak to, you know, at least a couple times a month, and like a comment or a message, or we like each other's stuff and we try to support each other. So I love that aspect. I love that it does create a culture of community and communication and support for artists. I am so lucky that I have really not had to experience any of the negative sides of using social media. My Instagram space is largely very fun and light and nice and really positive. So I really love that about it. So it's great that you can connect with people. I have clients that I kept in touch with, and people who are just nice human interactions, you know? So yeah, and I am isolated a lot of the time. So it is really nice to have that. I haven't really ventured onto, I'm on like TikTok a little bit, but I feel like I'm getting too old to learn new things. I've like hit that spot.
Well, I
so
just
like
started TikTok like literally 2 weeks ago. So it's all like touch and go, and it's so different from Instagram. So I'm like, I feel like I'm a newborn babe. Like I'm trying to find my steps, you know, and like figure out how to work it. So I'm just, you know, at this point I'm doing everything just for fun, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not like putting a lot of effort into it. It's definitely a different space with a different demographic. I find the people who are on TikTok, it's very different sort of interaction. But yeah, and even to what you were saying before, like we're also inundated with all of this scrolling and feeds every day. But I know for myself, like I try not to spend a lot of time on Instagram. Like I really moderate my time. I go on for a bit in the morning and a bit at the end of the day. And I might story what I'm working on during the day, but it's too distracting and I just don't get any work done. So I try to like put my phone in the other room. But in the morning when I'm checking it, I try to comment on at least like 5 to 10 other posts. So I've been making a point lately that I'm like, oh, if I see something I like, or I see a friend's post, I'm going to take a sec, I'm going to comment on it, because it is a way of showing support, you know, and it boosts their post in the algorithm. So yeah, I try to just take some time to like make a point of commenting on other people's, or if you comment on one of my posts, I'll try to come comment on one of yours. Like I can't do it for everything, but yeah, definitely try.
Let's talk a little bit more about the business side of your business, of your art business.
Yeah, I love it.
So like, if you think about it, there are projects that you can make relatively fast. Like you can use much thicker yarn and just boom, 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 in like 20 minutes, you're done. Or you can do like that commission piece that's like 5 foot long and it takes a lot of back and forth. Yeah. That skateboard, and I want to come back to the skateboard. But like, sure. How do you decide for yourself? How do you balance for yourself how much of the work, like, because it's like, it also sells for different price points, right? So cheaper works probably are easier to sell. There's more people who can afford it. Whereas if it's like a large piece, it takes a lot of time. How do you decide like what's next? Do you think about it like purely as business? Do you feel like, okay, I did this size, so now I have to go to that size? I did round, so I have to go square? Or is it like art driven? Is it like ideas driven?
Such a good question. You ask really, really great questions, Larry. Like seriously, best questions I think I've ever been asked. It's like a bit of both. Like I fully rely on my income from this business. It's not a hobby. Like this is my salary and my family relies on it. So I do have to make decisions based on like finances sometimes. So sometimes I'll be like, okay, I need to stock certain things that I know will sell. Definitely when I was starting out, I made a lot of like smaller pieces and I was focused on production. And I think that's where so much of my experimentation and practice came in, because I was making all the time and trying so many different things. And I would just put everything in my shop and they would sell when they would sell. My business now is very different in that I'm often booked with commissions. Like I often have a couple of commissions, or like people can buy made to order pieces. So they're designs that I make over and over again that people like. So usually my rainbow weavings. So I usually have like a queue of orders. So I don't actually make that much for myself anymore. I don't have a lot of time to make pieces that I just want to make just for fun. And that it's good in the sense that I have like steady business and I have a steady income if I'm making for clients, but then sometimes my creativity can suffer because you start to feel like you're just producing work, especially when you're repeating a design. Right. So for example, I have 9 circular rainbow weavings in my order queue right now. So I have to just make 9 of them, which I can do, but it feels more like production work. I do enjoy making them. I love making them. If I ever don't, I'll take them out of my shop. But I do love the more creative projects. I also love working on large scale. This is like my passion. So I just finished this weaving that's 5 feet by 3.5 feet. I love making large work and I would love to do more of that. So I'm trying to find ways to put myself out there more, to get more large scale commissions. I'd also love to like do a gallery show or something. Like I don't come from that world, but I'm interested in like putting my foot in that door too, and maybe trying to have more time for creative exploration as opposed to just running a business, because they are 2 different things and sometimes they work really well together and sometimes they don't. So well, yeah.
Yesterday I was interviewing another artist and she does sort of like machine embroidery, but like also like combining all different kinds of materials. And she loves doing art, like art exhibitions of her art. And she said like her biggest problem is she likes to have like 30 to 40 pieces for the exhibition, but she sells it all. Would you have the same problem? Like if tomorrow somebody calls you and says, Jen, I want you to post all your, like put your pictures in my gallery, would you have something to put there?
No, I wouldn't have 30 or 40 pieces made. No, definitely not. no, I'd love the opportunity to like work towards that and then like maybe get a grant and like have a year to just like make, with the end goal of being like having an exhibit or something. I would really, really love to do that. That's like a future goal and something I've thought about before, but again, it's like you need the funding and the time to be able to do that, and it's tricky. And then if you're running a business, you just stop running your business and just move to something else, it's hard to know what to do. So, but my business has evolved like many times in the 6 years. It's not the same as when I started. It's always changing. So I think as a creative, you also just have to be, you know, you have to be a little bit open to what the market wants and what's happening. So like a good example is that I think like before the pandemic started, I was selling a lot of original art and that was probably more the focus. And then once the pandemic started and everyone started to be at home all the time, there was a real shift and people wanted to buy weaving kits. So I sell looms and fiber and courses, and that all of a sudden that's all anybody wanted to buy, and I couldn't keep them in stock. I was selling out every month because there was this huge boom and people were just stuck at home and they all wanted to make crafts, you know, like, so you have to be a little bit, you have to be ready and open to that. So and now like it's really quiet right now. And I think it's like, you know, there's inflation, there's a recession, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now that is really hard, and people are just not spending money, I think. So I know right now like business is really quiet. So it's like, yeah, you have to be pretty innovative and ready to switch directions if you're running a business. Yeah.
I mean, do you ever like feel frustrated with that like just when you feel like you figured it out and everything goes great, something else happens and it's like, boom, you have to start reinventing yourself again?
Yeah, it can be totally frustrating. And it's scary too, because when you're self-employed, there's no guarantees, you know? And that's something like I've really seen this year with, I've just seen my sales like really slow down. And everyone else I'm speaking to is experiencing the same thing. So it's not just me. It's like, and it makes sense. Like everything is just really expensive right now. The price of gas is through the roof and people are having a hard time making ends meet and all these terrible things are happening in the world. And we're just reading the news every day and people maybe don't want to buy pretty things. Like I get it. So, but yeah, it's totally scary. But I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're a risk taker at heart. Like I think people who want to run their own businesses are just kind of up for the challenge as well. So yeah, I'm trying to stick it out as long as I can. We'll see what happens this year. Yeah, it feels pretty wild right now, but.
Well, if I met you 6 years ago and I would ask you about your dreams, you probably wouldn't even think about looms and fiber and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you think if I'll talk to you like another 6 years from now, do you think you're still gonna be doing this?
I think I will always weave. I don't think I will ever put down weaving. There's really something about it that I just love. It really speaks to me very deeply. And like, I will never give up having a creative practice again. I think I'll always want to make woven art. I just love it. But I don't know if I'll be doing this in another 6 years. I would love to say yes. And I hope I'm still making art for a living, because it's a vocation that I just feel so grateful to be able to do. And it's really helped me in a lot of areas of my life, but I don't take it for granted either. And I realize that I'm very lucky to do this. And, you know, it could change for sure. I'm somebody who's like had a lot of different careers and jobs too. Like I'm very comfortable sort of reinventing myself every 5 years if I need to. So a pretty adaptable person. So I'm open to change, but yeah, I hope I'm still doing it.
Is there a piece like in your home or something that you would never sell that means so much to you that it just stays with you as an heirloom?
Yeah, well, I have the first weaving that I ever made. So the very first weaving that I ever made, I still have it. It's in my kitchen and I won't ever sell. I don't think it's worth selling. It's not like it's the first one I ever made, but it's very like sentimental because it was my first experience on the loom. And I think it's actually pretty good for a first piece, but that's the one I won't ever part with. Everything else, I don't get super attached to my own work. Like I love the process of making things, But then once it's made, I'm really okay with like letting it go. I think it's more about the process for me. And I love that people love my art and want to have it in their homes and spaces. I think that's wonderful. So yeah, I always feel so grateful that someone would want to purchase my artwork and have it in their home. That's pretty special.
Well, you mentioned the queue, right? The queue of orders. Are you a one project at the time kind of girl?
Yes and no. Right now, I try to just do one at a time. I feel like life has been really kind of wild for us the last year or so, and it's hard to juggle too many things. Sometimes I do like having more than one project on the go. Like I used to work on client commissions, but then I would always have a creative project on the side. This year I have a little too much going on. I have a lot of projects behind the scenes and I'm not really able to do that right now. So right now I'm just working on one at a time and working through them. Sometimes if I'm making more than one thing, like if I'm doing a bunch of rainbows, I might work on 2 or 3 at the same time because I'm using the same materials and the same process, and it's more like production work. So sometimes I stack them up that way, but mostly, yeah, just one at a time.
Well, I tell you, my biggest problem is like my yarn stash, right? So I have enough yarn to last a few lifetimes for probably multiple people. However, every time there is a new project, I'm like, well, I don't have the color that I want, or I don't have the right thickness of the yarn. Do you have the same issue? Like, do you have yarn that like, or whatever, the wool that you use all the time, and then you just don't have the exact shade that you envision, or you don't have the right thickness? Like, do you have the same struggle in your life?
Yeah, my stash, like, it's funny because I know stashes are like a thing. My stash used to be huge, used to be very big. And again, I think it was at a time when I was doing a lot of experimenting and I'd want to try different things. So I'd be like, oh, I need this color, or I want to try different weights of materials. And I've been weaving long enough now that I really know what I like. And I have my suppliers that I like. So I know the yarns I like. For me, it's very much about color. I do a lot of gradient work too. So I need to have a lot of colors. So like even behind me, this wall is just all roving. Right. It's just all different colors. So every one of those bins, like these are all pinks, but they have like
all different shades,
like 6 or 7 different shades of pink per bin. So I need to have a lot of colors. So in that respect, I have a lot. But now I have like my favorite brands and I sort of stick to them. But if it is if I'm working on like a commission or like a particular project, I do often need to order like specific supplies for a project, which is always fun. It's always fun to find new fiber suppliers and try new things. So I love that.
Is it difficult for you to price your work? Because it's like there is cost of materials, there is time spent, but it's also art.
Yeah, it's not difficult for me. Like my work is expensive, like, but I think I charge what it's worth. Like my materials are expensive. You know, you buy yarn is very expensive. It's not cheap. And I really prioritize using natural fibers in my work. So I work honestly, mostly with wool, and it's high quality, so it's not cheap. And I price my time accordingly based on my experience and my work. So I think my work's priced super fairly for what it is, but it is on the higher end for sure.
Do people complain about it?
No, people don't complain. And I think if they're complaining, I don't think they understand what handmade artisanal tapestries are worth. I see a lot of people not charging enough, especially when they're first starting out. I see people pricing their work very low. I find that frustrating because I feel like it sort of can bring down everybody. And when, you know, if you go on Etsy and you see a similar size tapestry ranging anywhere from $100 to $600, it's confusing for customers. And so whenever I talk to people who are just starting out, I really encourage them to spend a lot of time researching pricing and understanding how to price handmade work, because often you won't even be making any money. You know, you're just paying for your supplies and you're not even covering your time. Right. It's hard to, like knitting too, like weaving is slow, it's not fast. So if you're going to make a tapestry or if you're going to make a sweater, it's going to take many hours of your time to do that, you know, and your time is valuable. You shouldn't be paid nothing for that. So
well, yeah. Etsy is like a bit frustrating in the sense that it's a global market, right? So
Yeah.
you're competing with people where the average, salaries are like much lower, or the cost of living is much lower. So what's your time worth in Canada can be like a month in Bangladesh, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that frustrating because you're competing against the whole world?
I guess I don't really think about myself competing against like the whole world or other markets, because I feel like they're not always comparable. Like perhaps the quality isn't the same. I feel like I have my clients, and like people who want to buy from me will come and buy from me, and someone who wants who maybe doesn't have in their budget will go and buy it from someone else, and that's okay. So yeah, I don't really think about it too much, honestly. Yeah.
So is there a dream? Like, do you wake up and you're like, okay, my dream for this year is that, or like my dream for the next 5 years is that? Like, is there something you work towards to?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would have said yes, but I feel like right now I'm having a hard time getting into that headspace. We've like, as a family and as a business owner, I've had a lot of struggles this year, and this year has actually been the hardest year, I think, since the pandemic has started. We've just had a lot of illness in our house, and my kids have missed so much school, and they've been home a lot, and it's been really hard for me to even like work on the projects I have in front of me. I'm playing a lot of catch up right now, so I don't really feel like I'm in a headspace where I can step back and like sort of envision for the future, because I'm like honestly just trying to survive the day to day right now. I feel like a lot of people are kind of in this position right now. So yeah, if I did have a dream for myself, it would be, well, I love teaching. I love sharing my love of weaving with other people. And again, I don't think I'm a technical teacher, but I love sharing my passion for weaving and my passion for creativity. And I love bringing that out in other people. So teaching more is something I would love to do. I would love to do more workshops and travel and in the future. Or like I said, I would love to get my foot in the door of maybe more of like the fine arts world and spend more time just honing my creative vision and maybe working towards like an exhibition. So putting that out into the universe, if anyone hears this, I would love to do it. Yeah, I just need to get out of this, like, I'm a little bit in survival mode right now, so I'm not quite there, but hopefully one day.
I'm gonna put all the links to your workshops, to your website and everything. So hopefully you're gonna find some new audience, and hopefully things will change for the better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen. I loved having you on my channel. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Irina. This was great. You're an amazing, excellent interviewer. This was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.